Hello all. Today I wanted to make a video titled The Problem with Niche Characters. Now I've made a video on this topic before, but it was more so me being confused as to why people want niche characters so badly in this game. And it's not even like they were exactly arguing for getting them, consistently. Literally just justifying Saridra being garbage because she's so-called niche. And they feel better about not having to feel FOMO for a character who's only best in slot for two others. Yet, even for the character she's best in slot for, it's incredibly underwhelming, right? And so, I wanted to make this video on why, Saridra being niche absolutely fucking sucks, right? Now, I've already explained this before. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it to make the video longer. It's quite clear why exactly it sucks. If you aren't giving a Zhao Q level increase in your DPS's performance in the big 25, then you have no reason to be pulled on if people already have some of the older general supports like Ruan Mei, Robin, Sunday, Tribby, the whole lot, right? Now you guys might be saying, oh my god, you're advocating for support power creep. If it's a character in their specific niche losing sometimes and other general AoE buffers being competitive, then yes, I do want that character to power creep other supports in that specific niche, right? Because otherwise, that character has zero reason to be pulled on. And this is why Zhao Q has been universally clowned on in the HSR fanbase since his release. Because yes, even though he was a best in slot for literally the strongest DPS in the game at the time, even then people still had the, brain power to realize this guy is literally only best in slot for one character. If this one character gets power crept in the future, then he literally loses all of his pull value. He is worse than other supports in every single team in the game. And so this is the problem with Saridra. Given HSR's natural power creep progression, even if she's slightly better than the current general AoE buffers now, and you're happy with that, that means she will likely instantly be power crept the second we go into version 4, and we get that version power spike that we always get in HSR, right? So, another issue that arises from not being a significant upgrade over other support options for your niche DPSs is that Eidolons and Eidolon creep is a very real thing these days. For example, at least when it was Acheron and Zhao Q, right? Zhao Q is a very big boon towards Acheron, and Acheron's Eidolon investment was never the best, right? Her E1 is legit just a crit rate stat stick, and then her E2 just allowed her to run a Harmony without losing the damage dealt that she has in her kit, because she loses damage dealt if she does not have two Nihilities on the team, right? So this was the problem, was back then there weren't two Zhao Q level Nihilities, so you'd pull Zhao Q and then the E2 would have some value, because then you run it with Sunday or Robin, right? However, these days there are now 3 Zhao Q level characters, including Zhao Q himself, with oh wait, no, sorry, there are 4. There are actually 4 Zhao Q level characters. We have Heislin's buffed Silverwolf, and we also have Cypher alongside Zhao Q. So the E2 literally only lost value as the time went on, and even the best of the best E0 to E2 jumps in version 2, such as Fireflies, you only really saw a 70% overall increase in the team's performance, right? Move on to Amphorius, and everything is different, right? the Eidolon creep is much bigger, and especially for Phanon. Phanon has the strongest E2 in the entirety of the game currently, gaining on average a 90 to 100% increase from E0 to E2 performance. And then on top of this, in his weaker endgames such as Pure Fiction that are filled with pure AoE, it increases his performance by around 140%, if not more. Because of there being a permanent 5 enemies on field in Pure Fiction, this means he literally gets an extra meteor every single turn he takes. So he can do 7 counters, 7 meteors, and a finisher with one of his ultimates, right? So he basically becomes triple T0 in every endgame mode the second you get him E2. Right. Now, not everyone in Ampho has this big of a jump at their E2, but a lot still have very good jumps at E2. For example, Herda and as well as Cassie. They both get around 100% increases in their overall performance, going from E0 to E2. Aglaia gets around a 100% from E0 to E2. My Day gets around a 100% plus from E0 to E2. The only main DPS in Amphorius that doesn't get a 100% jump from E0 to E2 is Anaxa, and that's because Anaxa's Eidolons are actually supportive and more so targeted towards buffing the team's damage and not just his own. His E1 is 16% defense reduction on enemies for 2 turns. His E2, he puts 20% res pen for the weaknesses on enemies, right? And then after this is when he finally starts getting self-damaging Eidolons. His E4 is the strongest Eidolon for increasing his own damage behind the E6. So that should go to show you, if the E4 is a second best value Eidolon for his hyper carry performance, very clearly tell that these two are targeted towards increasing the team's performance. Every other hyper carry DPS in Ampho gets around a 100% plus increase going from E0 to E2, not the fake characters. The fake characters have really mid vertical investment. I personally think this is because their banners are indefinite, and so because they're available basically all the time, Hoyo didn't want people to be running around with E2S1 sabers, E2S1 archers, maybe some E6s, right? Because of them running for so long and them having the same power increase as the normal characters, right? That's just a guess though. So if you pull Saridra, let's say, right, her current performance jump for Phanon is calced at around 15 to 20%. And for Anaxa, it's around 5 to 10% better than an E0 Tribi or an E0 Robin. So you get a 10% upgrade in your DPS's performance if you drop up to, on average, right, 160 pulls. Because if you lose the 50-50, on average it's around 80 pity. That's 160 pulls for a 10% performance increase on your DPS, right? Why in any fucking world would you go for that support? Because keep in mind, this isn't a general support. This is a niche support. They're already only best in slot for literally 2 characters in this game, right? There's no one else. So chances are you're only going to have this woman on one team for basically ever. And why would you drop up to 160 pulls for an E0 when you can get to E1 and be one step closer towards the E2 for a lot of these Amphorius DPSs? And instead, if we want to compare getting E0 S1 Saridra or E1 S0 Saridra, who makes your Anaxa or your Phanon like 40% stronger, you can just get an E2 Anaxa get an even bigger overall increase. Or what I'd recommend, invest into Anaxa's support vertical investment, E1 Tribi, E1 Sunday, stuff like that, right? Or Phanon, who gets a literal over 100% increase in his performance if you go from E0 to E2. Even the light cones for Anaxa and as well for Phanon give bigger jumps to their overall performance than actually pulling Ceridra, right? If you're going to be niche, you need to bring that niche power up. You need to be a Hyacine for a Castris, a Jiaoqiu for an Acheron. You need a reason to be pulled on, not being competitive with a version 2 attack team buffer, right? That should in no world be a thing that's happening, because what people will do, which is what exactly if I mentioned, is they will just go for Eidolon investment instead and get a way greater return on their investment, or they will go vertical investment on the supports they already own, right? Like if you got an E0 Tribi for Anaxa and you don't want to go into Anaxa's vertical investment since it doesn't increase his performance all that much, in no world, if you already own a Tribi, would you pull Ceridra? Because Tribi is going to be in that second slot alongside Sunday. Why would you not just pull E1 Tribi? It is literally the strongest E1 in the entirety of the game, and Anaxa is actually one of the biggest benefactors of this E1 because of the way his bounce works. In full AoE scenarios, he really doesn't have all that much of a high damage output, right? The damage Anaxa does full AoE and the damage he does single target isn't all that different. So being able to have E1 Tribi, who will put basically 110% more of the single target damage toward the highest HP mob on field, is incredibly valuable for the likes of Anaxa, because this allows him to still do very, very good amounts of single target damage while killing the side mobs slowly until he can eventually get to that single target mob, right? Because Anaxa truly doesn't really start shining until he goes down to much lower target scenarios. In full AoE, it simply is not his specialty, despite being an erudition character, and this is why Pure Fiction is his weakest mode. It's because it's a constant 5 mobs on field all the time, right? So, TLDR, there isn't actually anything wrong with niche supports. It's mainly just niche supports need to bring that niche level of a power up, right? They need to be a significant boon to that niche that they're supporting, because if they aren't, they have no reason to be pulled on in the slightest. Once again, be a Hyacine for a Cassie, be a Jiaoqiu for an Acheron, be a Robin for the follow-up teams, right? Be something special, because otherwise, with the Eidolon creep we have these days, why would you not just invest into the Eidolons of a Tribi or a Robin, who are much more general and best in slot for way more teams? And if you already own these supports, then you're actually cutting cost while getting way better overall performance, even in the niche DPS's teams, compared to an E0-0 Ceridra, right? That's all I have to say. Hope you all have a great day. Hope you have a great night. Peace out.